Night, or for those joining us online, your dinner last night. We had a wonderful day yesterday at Map the Gaps. Today, hopefully, we will have just as good a day, if not better. We have two key speakers for you this morning, and we're going to start with Gary Hessling, who has an extensive career as a hydrographer, having left the Royal Navy after 33 years, retiring as hydrographer of the Navy in 2019. He's currently the Associate Director of NLA International, which is a maritime blue economy solutions company that helps nations develop and manage their own sustainable blue economies. In this current role, he's a passionate advocate for the development of new solutions, both technological and automation, particularly in the area of data and data services. And I invite Gary to come talk.
Helen, thank you very much. And it's a real pleasure to be here today, to see you all in person, and those who are attending virtually. A pleasure to meet you. And what an amazing place to be. The spiritual home of hydrography, and it's a real privilege to be able to speak to Map the Gaps and the Map the Gaps community. So, without further ado, NLA International is a maritime blue economy solutions company. I see you're probably saying, what is that? What does that mean? Well, we champion the implementation of the blue economy to create sustainable ocean environments for people and for economies that depend upon them. We aim to cover the entirety of the blue economy, embracing its complexity, identifying trends, trying to make the whole greater than the sum of the parts. It's why we're so delighted to be involved in this groundbreaking project with Seabed 2030, because it has such critical cross-cutting importance. We provide a range of services right across the blue economy sectors, all of which are supported by our world-leading database, Marine and the Maritime Affairs, known as our Blue Economy Knowledge System. And we're very fortunate to have been commissioned by a host of leading agencies and enjoy the breadth of our engagements and the varieties of challenges we are set. So where do you start mapping the gaps? We all know too well that 70% of the world is made by water. And we all know in 2023 that 70% of the world's oceans and seas have yet to be mapped to some form of degree. But what and where are the priorities? The size and the scale of the challenge is vast. It will not go away. You have to deal with the elephant in the room. But how are you going to solve this? Where do you start? The wind in the sails is designed to help overcome this challenge and help get Seabed 2030, the elephant, out of the room. We came to Seabed 2030 4 years ago with a proposal called Wind in the Sails. The aim of this is a multi-phase project to unite the global hydrographic community around a global seabed mapping priority, underpinned by robust evidence, articulates the value of seabed mapping. This is a multi-phase project. Phase 1 is about a rapid evidence review, and that was completed. Phase 2 is detailed modelling and benefit extrapolation and prioritization of need, and that has been completed. We're currently in Phase 2B, which is due to complete in the spring of next year, and that's the benefits analysis determination of global prioritization. All sounds quite complicated, but really when you break it down, it's quite simple and straightforward. And then Phase 3, when we get there, will be the end of the wind in the sails, will be the release of an interactive priority action map, and a strategy for Seabed 2030 to deliver. So let's start looking at each of those in a little bit more detail. So Phase 1, the rapid evidence review. ultimate aim was to try and identify global community hydrographic and seabed mapping needs. This was done by the form of an online survey. A detailed question set was created, looking and trying to understand those users, practitioners of seabed mapping data, what data they wanted, why did they want it, what data density is needed, what data types are needed, what is it going to be used for, why is it important, are just some amongst the many of the question set that was put together. This online survey was incredibly successful. My directors tell me normally 100, 200 responses gives you a good understanding and a good response to an online survey. We were close to just under 800 responses across 90 countries worldwide. It was phenomenal. The data and the insights and the knowledge we gained for that was incredible. And within that also we had 154 offers of potential data sources that could go to seabed 2030, which was passed on to seabed 2030 and the team. But without doubt, what came across the survey results was universal support of the need and importance to map the world's seabeds, and that seabed 2030 is critical in achieving that mission. So we then took forward and started to look at modelling and benefits, and extrapolation and the prioritisation of need. We did this through 3 objectives. First was a quantitative analysis of the survey results, and I'll talk more about that in a second. The second was a catalogue of models, premium models used for seabed mapping and benefits analysis. And the third, or objective 5, was a proposed model that seabed 2030 could adopt and implement accordingly. So starting with the quantitative analysis. So those results that we had across 90 nations across the world gave us information types by question and types and answers. What we did is that we then subdivided the world up to 12 regions. For the purpose of this exercise, agreed by seabed 2030, 12 regions of the world, and within those regions where we had particular responses to the survey itself. I say 12, it was in fact 11 regions. Number 12 was other. We didn't get anyone else report to other, just in case we missed something or someone. So of those regions, we then looked at differing criteria. We looked at sector needs. We looked and tried to define what needs and requirements and what the priorities were within particular waters within nations. So within their territorial waters and within their EEZs. We looked at specific analysis on sector needs within those particular areas of water, those seabed mapping needs and their interest within those areas. The types of data they wanted and the data density that was needed as well. And that gives an indication of interest and priority, and which was all tabulated and analysed accordingly. It was a really informative exercise that gave us a different view from another lens of the data that we'd already received. And we were able to identify, for example, that in the North Atlantic, the lead industry sector was seen as renewable energy technology going forward into the future. And the same for different parts of the world. We brought out what particular sectors were prominent and were evident from that results. We then looked at a catalogue of premium models for seabed mapping analysis. And the purpose of this was to review existing models that are used by geospatial bodies and industries, identifying factors that could be leveraged by seabed 2030. And I say again, could be leveraged by seabed 2030 in their mission. Looking at the calculation of social, economic benefits that could be made and derived from mapping those areas that are currently uncharted across the world. But ultimately, we're looking to derive and understand value and benefit. And the value and benefit is not just financial, it's scientific value and benefit, it's environmental value and benefit, and equally other criteria as well. But ultimately, those values and those benefits can then be used for value proposition. The value proposition that could be used for investment and for funding. And I'll talk more about that in a while. So when we looked at the models, we used 3 criteria. The first one was to look at previously executed seabed mapping studies that included benefits analysis, which included Infomar, the US 3D nation study, and we also looked at Australia and the Deloitte commissioned survey by Geoscience Australia. The second criteria looked at benefits analysis, experience drawn from the wider geospatial sectors. And the third criteria was then looking at benefits analysis and experience drawn from the private and NGO sectors. We identified within each of those reviews of models aspects and nuances that may have resonance or applicability to CBED 2030. We also created, from the slide here, and you don't need to see the detail, but I explain now, we created a benefits analysis model that CBED 2030 can use and implement when going forward with their mission. It consists of 8 steps. First step is all about benefits analysis parameter bounding. Step 2 is the CBED 2030 value chain. 3 is looking at CBED 2030 sectors of interest. 4 is use cases and the value proposition. 5 is the cost base for CBED 2030. 6 are the benefits to CBED 2030. And 7 and 8, which sit out to the right-hand side of the model, are economic value analysis and economic value assessment report, going back to my thing about assessments for funders and business cases and value proposition. These are aspects that can be then used, should CBED 2030 want to go down this route, by the likes of organizations like KPMG or Deloitte going forward to feed into business case development for CBED 2030. So from all those models, we identified those areas where there were nuances and aspects and applicability to CBED 2030 to try and derive and create a model that would work for CBED 2030 going forward, that they could, a global geospatial model for them to use. Now, we quickly and readily identified, and I'm sure it will have resonance with all here, you can build a generic framework of a global model, but you cannot create a single global model itself. There are other factors that need to be reflected and accepted. So we readily identified there were a need for regional models that sit underneath this framework. Regional models that reflect those particular regions' needs, their benefits, their value, and of which you are then able to identify and determine priorities that sit within that particular region. And those priorities could sit with social, economic priorities, scientific priorities, and environmental priorities. So we then realized that when we finished these aspects of looking at models and looking at prioritization and benefits analysis, that we've got a framework of what needs to be put into place, but we need to put the meat on the bones. And this is what phase 2B was. 2B wasn't originally envisaged when we first wrote the proposal for wind in the sails, but we realized that as we go forward, you need to have the meat, or I would say, the evidence and the documentation and information sets that can be utilized in going forward. And that's why we have Objective 6, which is more looking into the key areas of prioritization and benefits analysis. Objective 7, prioritization itself of how CBED 2030 was going to derive and determine prioritization needs within its mission. And then Objective 8 was another targeted community engagement survey, which used the results from the initial users survey that we got worldwide and the results from the quantitative analysis assessment we did going out to other bodies and agencies. And I'll talk a little bit about each of those now. So the review of key areas, we needed to produce CBED 2030 with a benefits documentation set. A documentation set that reflected sectors and impact sectors, the value proposition, and use cases. But before I go into those, and those being the evidence, we also looked at regional segmentation. So like we did with the models, global models, geospatial models, we assessed and came up with a regional segmentation for our quantitative analysis study, but clearly other national and international bodies and agencies use regional segmentation of the world, the likes of UN, OECD, UNESCO, etc., etc. So we looked at those and then again highlighted areas of applicability that Seabed 2030 might want to use as well as they go forward and they derive their areas of prioritization within particular regions. And do they want to adopt similar segmentation of bodies or complete alignment with certain international bodies of regional segmentation, or go on a regional segmentation of its very own, which is applicable to Seabed 2030. And that was passed to Seabed 2030 to review and look at and implement, and I believe they're in the course of doing that today. But the one thing I would also like to draw out from this is the use case. You'll see on the left-hand side there's a flyer we produced, the executive fact sheet, which could be used then by Seabed 2030 and anyone else here, because it will be on the Seabed 2030 website, to promote seabed mapping, why it's needed, why it's important, what it contributes for, what are the key sectors, etc., etc. The use cases we developed took it one step further. So we identified through the organisation of Seabed 2030 and the regional data centre heads through workshops, key use cases of using seabed data across society, whether it's socioeconomic use cases, environmental, science, etc. From that, we derived or reduced down to 12 priority use cases. And of those, we then built use case documents, which are just about to be sort of finalised and signed off by Director Seabed 2030, and then available to go into the public domain in due course. But they looked at things like ocean discovery and ocean exploration. And we engaged with industry and science experts and interviewed with them for their valuable insights and their sort of thoughts that we could draw out in the needs and requirements of that particular use case of why it's important to conduct seabed mapping. And Victor very kindly and valuably contributed to that one on ocean discovery. But there are others covering cables and pipelines, government policy, tsunamis, climate change, and sea level rise in the Pacific Islands, states, etc., across 12 overall. And they're going to be amazing to be able to then draw out and to be able to show justification and the needs and requirements for seabed mapping. So looking at prioritisation itself, our next phase of work is just commencing. It finishes in the spring of next year. There's prioritisation, you can see there. We're looking to define the prioritisation that Seabed 2030 can use themselves. So we've got the Oz Seabed prioritisation tool and so on and so forth. We've got the GEVCO prioritisation app, Aurora. There are others out there, and if there are others who have prioritisation tools and software, then please make us aware. We'll very much like to look at them and talk to you about it, because ultimately what we want to do is again then derive a prioritisation tool that will be of unique importance and applicability to Seabed 2030. So over the next 5 months, we'll be going through that process, looking at the mapping prioritisation process that Seabed 2030 will use and implement, looking at their tool user needs requirements, looking at the existing tools that are already out there, and then looking at prioritisation, building an architecture of a tool that can then be put forward to Seabed 2030 to use and implement accordingly, getting them along the journey of seeing to get the elephant out of the room. Target A, Objective 8 was a targeted community engagement survey, and these are the results as it shows on here. Unlike the first survey, this is very much a tailored and focused audience. So we had the results of the online survey, user needs and requirements for seabed mapping across the world. We had the results of the quantitative analysis from that feedback and that input and that data to then define criticality in regions and particular sector needs and needs and prioritisation in regions of the world. We then took that forward with the other work that we've done on benefits analysis and strategies and seabed mapping with the results of those surveys to those national bodies and agencies who are responsible for discharging seabed mapping duties, i.e. the membership organisation of the IHO and the membership organisation of the IOC. So a target audience, circa 250, 300 or so, to get their views and inputs. Did they agree with those findings from the users around the world who want seabed mapping? Do they agree with those priorities and assessments that were made from the quantitative analysis, that in the North Atlantic, say again, renewable energy is the lead industry technology there, and all those around their regions around the world as well. And to say that we got 200 responses from a target audience of 250, 300, again, we were really pleased with that. What was refreshing was the high degree of correlation. There was no pushback to what came out of the user survey. And what we were expecting was some pushback from the national bodies and agencies on some of the regional evidence that we found from the quantitative analysis. But that was far from it. In fact, of those 11 regions, and these results are being assessed and finalised at the moment before the report is submitted to seabed 2030, but of those 11 regions, 90+% of responses agreed with everything that has been highlighted. There was no pushback at all around the world, which is great, because it just corroborates what we've been told and informed to date, and we are progressing along the right route and the right line. But also interestingly, that came out of it, we also asked a question about these nations and these bodies and agencies of saying, do you have a prioritised strategy? Do you have a benefits framework for seabed mapping within your own waters and jurisdictions and areas of responsibilities, your own EEZs? And surprisingly, only 49% said they had. So they had no clear strategy, the majority, of how they were going to map their EEZs. Yet, 83% of them said between the next 5 and 15 years, they had an intention to map the whole of their EEZs. Interesting results indeed. So phase 3, which will come in due course, and I won't go into detail now, will be looking then, building upon everything that we've done, of creating an interactive global map for prioritisation and priority action for seabed 2030. And the final aspect, objective 10, is creating the strategy of how seabed 2030 are going to achieve and deliver their mission. So, as I come to a conclusion, I love the hub and spoke. I love the wheel approach here. For me, seabed 2030 is the hub. The spokes are all the aspects and factors that feed into that, no matter what it might be. It could be aspects under their model, it could be aspects on their benefits analysis, their prioritisation, and how they're delivering and conducting their mission. But they're the spokes creating the wheel, the strength in the wheel that will turn, the wheel that will go forward. I've said today, one size does not fit all, and that is absolutely categorically true and clear. There is no one model that will fit and can be used and implemented by seabed 2030. There is no one regional segmentation that can be used and implemented by seabed 2030. There is no one benefits analysis and prioritisation process. It needs to be created. It needs to be adapted and adopted to meet the needs and the requirements, the unique needs and requirements, and the mandate seabed 2030 has to deliver and achieve its mission. I've spoken a lot about benefits, needs and benefits. It's critical foundation data understanding, what is needed, why it's needed, what benefits it brings across society as a whole. You've got to evidence that. You've got to understand all of that. I've spoken about value. Again, value of the financial value of mapping the seabed and the world's oceans that are uncharted at the moment, the scientific value, the social value, and environmental value. All other values need to be articulated and understood and documented to be ready to be used for seabed 2030. All of these factors then lead to and enable prioritization, an ability to understand and determine the prioritization of how you're going to tackle and approach seabed mapping in your regions of the world where you have your own particular factors and nuances. All of this provides evidence, and that's what it is. You need the evidence to be able to be used. And I'm a very keen proponent that in order to make significant inroads into the remaining 70+% of the world's oceans that are uncharted, you're going to have to look at differing methodologies of how you're going to achieve that. I'm a huge fan of crowdsourcing, and crowdsourcing has delivered phenomenally. But in my mind, crowdsourcing will not deliver the remaining 70% what is needed, and it certainly won't deliver it by 2030. So if you're going to want to make significant inroads in achieving your mission by 2030 and driving down the sheer percentage volume of unmapped areas of the world, you're going to need to look at other methodologies. And which is why we're saying, with Wind in the Sails, you need to have that evidence set that can be used, subject to whether seabed 2030, IHO, GEBCO, and Nippon Foundation want to go down this route of raising business cases to secure funding from banks and philanthropic organizations and international bodies and agencies to do seabed mapping. Because in my view, that is the only way you're going to achieve those large areas where ships do not currently transit across the world's oceans today. And ultimately, all of this is going to lead to strategy. It's going to lead to a strategy that seabed 2030 will have a clear understanding of what needs to be done, how they're going to do it, what their prioritization is, and how they're going to move forward over the remainder of their mandate and their mission. So for me, Wind in the Sails is not the solution, but it is certainly helping seabed 2030 get the elephant out of the room. Thank you.
Do we have any questions for Gary in the room? Yes, Victor.
Thank you, Gary, very much. We could go back to the slide that said Objective 8 that showed all the countries and their desire for prioritization, topped by the Philippines, but also on the list were Norway, Australia, Indonesia. All of them do not allow mapping with multi-beam unless they are permitted. Can you show, or at least tell these countries, that their prioritization for mapping is hindered greatly by the restrictions that they have put in place to allow mapping in the first place?
Yeah, Victor, that's a really good point you raised there. And, you know, it ultimately comes down to evidence, and we have the evidence to show that from those countries, those users, practitioners who said, we want seabed mapping for whatever sector they're in, for whatever requirements they stipulated in that survey, in the Philippines and Indonesia, etc. So that evidence is there. It can now be used to take to those nations and say, there is need, there is requirements, and here's the articulation. And whether that's through seabed 2030, to be able to do that or not, I don't know. Or whether it's through IHO, GEBCO, but we've got the evidence, you know, but it does need to be addressed, without a doubt.
Any other questions?
Yeah, thank you.
Microphone still?
Yeah, he's got it.
Thank you, Gary. Interesting. And I think the potential disconnect with what the very valid remark made by Victor is that if it has value for a country, is it clear that the value is really there when it's shared in the public domain? Or is it, can a country say, well, it's valuable for me, but by the way, I'm going to keep it for myself and therefore not allow other. That's the one thing. The other thing that I was thinking about is, you say correctly that crowdsourced bathymetry will solve a part of the area, which in the bigger total picture might not be taking the needle a big part. You're addressing a part that has the potential to make the needle move, but it's still, to my opinion, potentially only looking at the EEZs, because you're investigating or inquiring with the interest of coastal states, and coastal states have a primary interest in their EEZs. The aim of Seabed 2030 is to do 100%, especially the high seas, which, correct me if I'm wrong, there are people here that know better, but I think it's potentially 85% of the areas we're talking about, or 80% or something. So how does, is there evidence that would support the other 80%, or are we, hallelujah, saying on 15% of the remaining 75%?
Yeah, that's a good question. And do you want to answer that, Jamie, or do you want me to go first? Okay, so absolutely. We made it clear in the survey we did to the hydrographic offices and ISE members. Do you recognise and agree and support the need to map outside of EEZs, i.e. high seas? And large percentages of those have said, yes, we do. So they recognise the need and requirement to do so. Clearly they don't have any regulatory requirement to do so, because the requirements are up to their EEZ, should that be what they map to, and not the high seas. And absolutely, Seabed 2030's challenge and mission is, if nobody's got the mandate and there's no regulatory requirement out to EEZ to map the high seas, how's it going to be done? Those are transiting across the high seas on ships and therefore crowdsourcing. So again, I would go back to what we're trying to articulate and what we're trying to provide. Those use cases are going to be incredibly valuable documents, 4, 5, 6-page documents, specifically looking at particular sector requirement and need, which is not, it's global. It's a global need and requirement. So ocean discovery and exploration, the tsunami, the climate change, government policy, these transgress those boundaries of national responsibility. They're global aspects. Therefore, if we can evidence the criticality and the importance and the need and the value and the justification of mapping these areas, then you've got that there. You've got that evidence set that can be used, a business case, to then go and secure whether you want to get the funding then to then go and get it mapped. You've got the articulation of need and requirements, but you need to get the funding. It's not going to happen through crowdsourcing in those areas where ships don't transit.
Jamie, did you want to add?
Great. Gary, thank you for that. And I'd like to thank a number of people here, the NLAI team, for this huge amount of work, but also the contributors, and that's been not just the Seabed 2030 centres, but also members of the guiding committee and other stakeholders. I mean, Victor, I know you've input to this, and Fugro and others, so thank you. Yeah. The work's not done yet. There are some of the early reports published on the Seabed 2030 website. We've just put a search facility on there, so you should be able to access those and read them. The use cases are with me. There's going to be some internal circulation, Jeb might show, before we sort of bring those out and make them public, because they need to be consolidated into an indexed document. But going back to Everett's question, I mean, one of the things this will do, I mean, if you remember, for those that were here yesterday, Everett's presentation, the picture with lots of people with their head in the sand, and that, I think, has been one of the issues of, certainly in my career as a hydrographic surveyor, when you're trying to encourage your government, your ministries to invest in hydrographic surveying, ocean mapping, whatever, there are other priorities. So I think this is one of the things that is a tool that's going to be useful to draw people's attention to that economic value. It's only part of the whole, and going back to Everett's presentation yesterday, the Spillhouse projection, it is only one ocean, really, and we're here to map that one ocean, so every part of it is important in some way. Crowdsourced bathymetry gets to the places, a bit like the Heineken advert, isn't it? Or Carlsberg, reaches the parts that other other surveyors don't reach, as does satellite-derived bathymetry. But there are those systematic wide area surveys that still need to be conducted within EEZs, but also in the high seas. And at least if we can get an interest in mapping those EEZs by those countries who maybe have had their heads in the sand, then perhaps the target audience for looking at mapping the high seas in areas where nobody else wants to go is perhaps philanthropy. And I've always said that this will determine the global priorities, and all those bits that don't feature on the priority list should be the bits that Seabed 2030 and the wider community should focus on, because somebody else will do the other parts.
Okay. And could I, just one final thing to just go back. What was really pleasing from the online survey with the HOs and IOC members was their statement of saying, we intend, sort of 88, 83%, we intend to map our EEZs between 5 and 15 years from now. Whether they do so or not, we'll wait and see. But again, significant areas of water and ocean that's not been mapped yet. So, thank you very much.
And I think it's probably, if we can link this back, I think the use cases give the potential to actually form the basis for the stories that Fabian was talking about yesterday. How do we actually tell this story? How do we put the story to our potential philanthropic donators to be able to get this funded? Changing topics slightly, I'm very pleased to introduce Norma Trees, who is not a well-known figure in the hydrographic mapping community, but is an incredibly well-known member of the international yachting community, and is a voice of yachting with a career that spans a range of activities through yachting, including very successful business development. She's currently active on many groups of charitable and scientific research organizations, including on the boards of Seakeepers, Super Yacht Society, and the Yacht Aid Global. So, Norma, please take the stage.
Good morning, everyone. It's a true pleasure to be here among friends and many like-minded people. I'm here to describe to you many of the activities of the international yachting community, of which I've been such a big part for so long. Oh, where'd you get that photo? I love it. I'm going to be using a lot of words over and over again. International, global, cooperation. You're probably going to hear some things that you did not expect to do. But given that we have such a large crowd of people from all over the world, one of the things I like to do is identify, I'm not ready for the slides to start moving yet, whoever did that. If we can just stay with the first one for a moment, please. I don't know who's running that back there. Tim, did you hear me? You're here. In any case, I'm from America, even though I've worked all over the world. So in my native language, we say, good morning. So I'm going to have my colleague, Katie Sheehan, come up here. And I would like all of you, whether it's your native language or whether it's you live, to give us, please, stand up and give us your greeting in whatever your native language is. So, Evert, why don't you start? Goedemorgen. And don't you live in Norway? Of course. Okay, who's next? Dr. Resinapi. Say that again. Say good morning in your native language. Buongiorno. Okay, who's next? Come on, don't be shy. Please, Victor, stand up. Oh, excuse me, you first. Buenos dias. Victor, you were going to raise your hand. Please, in the back. Fantastic. Okay, please. Say that again, louder. Great. You say Greece, right? Maori, fantastic. Okay. Ignacio. Okay, who else do we have? Please. Wonderful. Calimera. Grazie, Claudia.
There's one at the back.
Another one at the back?
Morocco, صباح الخير.
And where is that from?
Arabic.
Fanta- Fantastic. How many are we up to so far, Katie?
You're at 12.
So far, 12. Here we go. Exciting. 13.
Portugal, bom dia.
Bom dia.
Brittany, des maths,
Say that again?
des maths.
And where's that from?
Brittany, northwest of France.
Ah bon? Oh, encore d'autres choses en français.
And in French, bonjour.
Bonjour, madame. Is that it? Good morning, eh?
From Israel, Boker Tov.
How many are we up to so far, Katie?
16.
16. Go ahead, take the microphone.
Bună dimineața from Romania.
This is great. Here we go, in the back. Ah, guten Tag. Guten Morgen. I think that's about it. Katie, how many did we come up to?
18.
I'd say 18 different good mornings in a room of this size. I can only imagine with the international group that we have. I hope we have many thousands that are watching what we're doing here. I'd like to thank Katie very much. You're going to see her later. She's going to be talking to you about some citizen science with seakeepers. So, with no further ado, I'd like to introduce you to the international yachting community and what I call the power of yachting to do good. So, thank you very much. Obviously, my name is Norma Treese. I've been involved in the yachting industry since I was very young. I started sailing at the age of 14. After I graduated, I did my first transatlantic on a sailboat on a 37-footer when I was 17. After college, I joined the professional yachting community as a chef and traveled the world for 10 years before moving home to what has now become my hometown of Fort Lauderdale, Florida, one of the largest yachting centers in the world. And I started my business career in yachting by the founding of the world's largest crew agency called Crew Network. I sold that. I became a journalist, started a couple of magazines you might know called Dock Walk. I worked for Boat International. I worked for the Yacht Report Group for many years. And I've had a very long and fruitful career as a business development specialist, including building one of the first international super yacht marinas in Barcelona called Marina Port Vell, and so on and so forth. And the way I've been able to do that is through my other parallel career as a volunteer. I joined the International Superyacht Society as soon as I came ashore, and that gave me the opportunity to be able to learn and shake hands and open the doors of most of the leaders of the largest companies within the yachting industry all over the world, including yacht builders, including service people, including professional captains, and so on and so forth. And I also, 25 years ago, was able to attend, you'll see the name here, of the International Superyacht Seakeepers Society. By the way, before I start talking about seakeepers, what I've prepared for you, instead of a lot of words on the screen, is a slideshow of the greater world of yachting. So you'll be seeing images of regattas, yacht builds, activities that we do. So I hope that you will enjoy that, and it will illustrate for you what I'm about to describe to you, the power of yachting to do good. You know, there's an expression in the world that says that green is glamorous, and I think that's absolutely true. And I think that that's something that unfortunately people do not understand about the yachting world. Yes, of course it is glamorous. We have some of the most beautiful, most expensive luxury items in the world. You can go ahead and run the slideshow, please. But it's true that we are able, through that glamour and through the power that we have as an international group of people dedicated to building fine yachts all over the world, that we can actually do fantastic things. I think you can tell that I'm a very passionate person and I work in a passionate industry, and that is something that's also worth sharing. And I'm going to be giving you a few examples across several different areas of... Are we having trouble with the slides? We started them, I shouldn't have stopped them, I guess. Ça va? Tim, can you help them? Okay, well, since we're with a group of scientists, I think it's important that we start with the contributions of the yachting world to the scientific conservation and research world. I mentioned that I was recently honored to join the board of the International Seakeepers Society. You may not know that we were founded here in Monaco 25 years ago with our first event. It was called the Bal de la Mer. I happened coincidentally to have been invited to attend that. Little did I know that 25 years later, I would be deeply honored to be asked to join the board of directors. We have only six board members throughout the world. We're based in Coral Gables, Miami, and we have offices in Singapore, in the UK, in New Zealand. We have a discovery fleet of vessels that travel the world. Victor mentioned that he thought maybe the yachting world was unable to contribute as much as it could to Seabed 2030 or other different types of voyaging activities, but the reality is that our vessels go places that no commercial vessel will ever be able to go, and that they are able to get into small locations that no larger vessel can ever go. Although, in all honesty, to me, a yacht is not a yacht until it's pretty good size. So I look at vessels primarily 30 or 40 meters and above as our target market. At Seakeepers, we own 18 vessels, and all of those, of course, have data loggers. I'm not going to talk too much about that because Katie's going to talk about that involvement that we have. We also have a discovery fleet that over the last 25 years has numbered more than 250. Our largest vessel has been about 80 meters, and we have them in every size range from about 20 meters all the way up to, as I said, 80 meters. Currently, you may have heard of our scientific exploration vessel that's called Surrey. And Surrey is a 64-meter vessel that has been part of the Discovery Fleet and one of our owned vessels that is used for scientific exploration for the last 3 years. And among other things, Surrey and her crew have discovered what is apparently extremely interesting to everybody in the scientific community, which is a hitherto unknown form of new plankton. And we anticipate that there's going to be a lot more of that ahead. We're involved in citizen science, and again, Katie's going to be talking about that. What we do basically is we put scientists aboard yachts, and we allow them to do the kind of missions that they think are critical to whatever their interest is. And of course, as you can imagine, those are wide and varied. In the last year, we've had about 79 days of scientists aboard vessels all over the world, and we've accomplished over 100 missions. A couple of them are particularly interesting that we did this year. One of them was in Costa Rica on board a beautiful yacht called Dardanella with a very good friend of ours. I was hoping that Francesca was going to be with us today, but she's not, the owner of Dardanella. And we had scientists that were aboard there that were actually reprising an old mission that we did, which was tagging different types of sea turtles, and also fixing some of the older tags that, you can imagine that sea turtles, as much as they travel, the tags get just as old as the turtles do. And that was apparently amazing, not only for the scientists on board, but also for the guests and the owners. So we offer a lot of inspiration to the scientific community, and we hope to the larger community, and definitely to our own people as part of the international yachting community. Another fascinating mission that we had this year was in Alaska, and our head of programming, Tony Gilbert, went there, and what they were studying there with a variety of international scientists was, as you know, whales, humpback whales in particular, communicate by whale song. And so they were not only studying whale song and trying to get more intimate with it, but they were actually putting speakers into the water and trying to learn if we could communicate with whales through their song. Now, I'm not really sure what the results are that. You guys as scientists understand more than I do that it takes a long time for the results of some of these missions to become known. But the idea of being able to communicate with whales through their song, I think, is absolutely fantastic, and something that definitely I think the whole world would be interested in learning. And if we can do that through our Seakeepers activities, that's something that we're also very, very excited about. We have a huge amount of educational outreach in a variety of different ways. And again, Katie will be talking about that, so you'll learn more. We're working on some new endeavors, including working on geo-specific missions, which our Discovery Fleet vessels are going to be identifying for us all over the world. That will give us the opportunity, when our vessels are going to those places, to actually participate in activities that different countries find relevant or important to them. So that is something, if any of you have geo-specific missions that you would like to see more attention paid to, if we can bring our vessels or our scientists to our, how many was it, Katie? 18 different countries we had today. How many did we count? 18? 18. At least 18, if not more, countries are represented here. So please be thinking about that, and let me know if you know of any geo-specific ocean science missions that you would like to see brought to your countries, and we'll see what we can do about that. We're also working on an exciting program with the head of our scientific council, Dr. Mark Luther, on identifying the DNA of fish. And as you probably know better than I do, what that does is helps us identify a scourge of our world, which is the overfishing and the decimation of fish populations worldwide. That's something that our Chairman Emeritus, Michael Moore, is extremely interested and participating in. We're very fortunate to have the support of any number of extremely important, obviously wealthy, and wealth is not a dirty word in the yachting world because we use it to do great things. And we recognize these influential people that have supported us. If you look at our website, you can see an extremely long list of our founders, about 50 of them, individuals and corporations that have contributed significantly to be able to support Seakeepers in the things that we do. And every single year we recognize a Seakeeper of the Year. And I would just like to read some of those names to you that I hope that you'll recognize. Our very first one is someone that is no stranger to either Monaco or this location in particular, and that is Jean-Michel Cousteau. And he was the first, as I said, and several years later, we were extremely proud to also honor Fabien Cousteau, who, of course, you saw give that great presentation yesterday. The second person that we honored as a Seakeeper of the Year was His Serene Highness Albert Ier. And again, multi-generational, several years later, the currently sitting His Serene Highness Albert was also similarly honored and joined us as a Seakeeper of the Year. In the room, and again yesterday, another fantastic presentation by Victor Vescovo a couple of years ago was another fantastic and well-deserving Seakeeper of the Year. You have probably heard as scientists the very famous name Dr. Sylvia Earle. Her nickname is Her Deepness for the incredible amount of underwater and diving activities she's done. She's been an extremely active seakeeper, and she has helped us tremendously in pinpointing the activities that we do. I'm going to be mentioning some others of those people as we go along. There's many other, of course, scientific and research organizations, and we work very closely with them as part of Seakeepers, including the Blue Marine Foundation, and we just did an event with them the day before the Monaco Yacht Show started. And they also are very, very involved in addressing overfishing in the world, and we're very, very happy to work closely with a lot of other organizations around the world. So again, if you have something that you think would be relevant for the international yachting community and that the International Seakeepers Society can help with, please let me know. And please do take a look at our website. It's really interesting and it's chock full of information that you might find relevant. You may not understand that the yachting world itself contributes greatly to my next subject, which is technology. We're at the cutting edge of a variety of different types of technologies because our clients, who are themselves are all extremely sophisticated people, are absolutely passionate about making sure that these multi-million-dollar floating palaces are at the cutting edge itself of technology and art, and we create many beautiful things. We are at the very pinnacle of trying to improve efficiency, sustainability, and quality in all of the yachts that we build all over the world. And some of the areas in which the yachting world is extremely active, and in fact, I believe are leaders in technology, include such things as nanotechnology, because of course, that's a big part of improving efficiency in operation. And you may know the name of fame, the yacht builder, Vedship, based in Holland, one of the very finest of the builders of custom yachts that have been around the world for over 60 years. In fact, it's an over 100-year company in Holland. They are just on the point of launching, after 10 years of research, the very first hydrogen cell-fueled yacht. And we heard a little bit about that yesterday, but obviously that is an extremely new technology and extremely efficient in terms of the emissions. And I anticipate that we're going to be seeing more of that. A little more offbeat, an 85-meter motor yacht was just launched a couple of months ago, and that is fueled by, of all things, vegetable oil. Now, I'm not quite sure what the availability of vegetable oil is around the world. It's probably not something that you're going to be able to, pull into your average dock and fuel up, but we might be hearing more about that. One of the expressions I really like that I'm surprised we haven't heard here, I'm sure all of you are familiar with IoT, the Internet of Things. And that is another area in which the yachting industry is extremely active and in fact has led to a significant amount of development of big data. It's important for us to be able to leverage data so that we can analyze that, to be able to make more informed decisions about exactly what is appropriate to put on our yachts as they travel the world. Of course, because the fact that our vessels are international, they travel the world, all kinds of places. I hope you've had a chance to see, and I haven't looked at the slideshow myself, in all honesty, but I did put in pictures of ice flows and all kinds of different things. But as the vessels are traveling, they need to communicate with their home offices. They need to communicate with their owners. They need to communicate with their builders. And so communication is something that's extremely important. And so we have companies that are leaders in cybersecurity and communication security. In risk analysis, I work with a company called Dryad Global that is frequently called upon to comment on such issues on different channels like CNN and BBC. In fact, we have our own Super Yacht Technology Forum every single year in Barcelona. Of course, one of the other things that it's obvious that the yachting industry are leaders in, and that is in charity and philanthropy. and humanitarian work around the world. I am very fortunate to have been one of the early board members of Yade Global, and I hope you're familiar with them. Yade Global has been active for over 10 years, and what we do is provide humanitarian relief and disaster relief work together with NGOs all over the world. And some fantastic missions have been accomplished by Yade Global, including being extremely active when the cyclone and tsunami hit Vanuatu in the South Pacific. We had vessels that stood by and supplied such essentials as drinking water and medical assistance. More recently, the hurricanes that devastated the Caribbean and the Bahamas, Hurricanes Maria and Dorian, were particularly devastating to another area that I like to call home, which is the Bahamas. And in the Abacos, which were basically flattened by Hurricane Dorian, we had one yacht in particular, the yacht Loon, that stood by for more than a week. They were supposed to be on charter, and they were unable, of course, to accomplish that charter because the Bahamas were out of communication for almost an entire month. They used the food that was supposed to be used for the crew and for that charter, and they fed basically the entire island for a week. They provided water, they provided medical help ashore, they helped build homes, and they helped open up the airport in Abaco on Marsh Harbor in order to make sure that other groups could come in and take over the mantle of continuing to help the Abacos recover. And let me tell you, that is a process that is still continuing today. So that's just another example of Yade Global, started by a yacht captain who traveled the world, Captain Mark Drullo, and he traveled the world. He was the captain for the American ambassador to Ireland. And when they were traveling the world about 15 years ago, let me tell you something, that was pretty darned innovative, and that was on a 100-foot motor yacht. So it doesn't take a large yacht, it just takes the willingness to be able to go where other vessels don't frequently go, which is a beautiful thing. Again, you have to have the passion in order to be able to do that. Another great example of humanitarian and disaster relief work is the vessel that's called Pacific Hope. It's a 60-meter hospital ship run by a very well-known captain named Marvin Wilson. And as you can probably tell by the name of Pacific Hope, they started their first missions in the Pacific. In the years since then, they've been very active in the Dominican Republic, in the Bahamas, and they just finished a voyage throughout the Amazon, up and down, over 6,000 nautical miles. And they provide all different types of medical help wherever they go. Some of their specialties include dental health, as we know, especially myself as an American. You know what we're like with dental care. If you don't take care of your mouth, the rest of your body really suffers. Another thing that they do a huge amount of work on is in restoring vision. So they provide not only glasses, but they can actually do operations on board, and they have specialized doctors that do that. So there's another vessel called Slipstream. Absolutely gorgeous motor yacht. You can tell by the name of it that it's just as slippery as its name is. One of the most popular charter yachts in the entire world. That crew itself are extremely philanthropic and humanitarian as they travel the world, accomplishing over 20 weeks a year of charter. It doesn't sound like much, but let me tell you, in the yacht world, 20 weeks a year is hard work. That crew pulls together and they donate 10% of their tips every single year to charitable foundations that they themselves identify, and they do those all over the world. And I was honored not too long ago to be able to see them be given an award by one of the local humanitarian groups, which is called Yachts du Coeur. I don't know if you know them. They're based out of Antibes, and they also do fantastic kind of more regional work. So I think I haven't given you yet the most fantastic example of charity and philanthropy within the yachting industry. There's a group out of the UK and Palma that's called Super Yacht Charities that is absolutely phenomenal. And their tagline is helping those in need who need it most. And what they do is they promote and assist in raising funds by super yacht professionals all over the world. And they donate over 90% of the funds that they raise to a huge variety of charitable endeavors. They so far have raised more than 664,000 pounds for the various charities that they work with. And I'm going to just give you a few of them listed. If you look at their website, it's incredible. They support this is super yacht charities, yachting professionals, Antibes and Saint-Tropez lifeboats, Oceans of Hope, Save the Med, Sail for Cancer, the Wet Wheels Foundation, Status Row, where 3 women rowed across the Atlantic Ocean challenging the everyday use of plastics. We know what plastics have done to our oceans, unfortunately. Super Yacht Charities also supports disabled sailors and sailing therapy, and so far they've been able to support more than 40,000 disabled sailors to be able to have access to the water. And I know from personal experience, having worked on some of those missions, that that is something that is absolutely amazing for disabled people all over the world. One of the NGOs that they support in Africa is called GLEAM, and that works with underprivileged families and single mothers with children. So I think you can agree that that is pretty fantastic outreach of an entirely volunteer organization. And the way they raise their money is in typical yacht fashion. They host every single year a couple of golf tournaments in Palma and in the UK. They have the annual Super Yacht Ball, which if you ever have interest in doing something yacht style to raise money, I'm telling you, it's a lot of fun and it's incredible how much money they raised. This year alone, they raised over 200,000 euros in one event at their Super Yacht Charity Ball. In my hometown of Fort Lauderdale, there's a company that's called National Marine, which is a global supplier of everything that a yacht needs, no matter where you may be. In a single day, just before the Fort Lauderdale Boat Show this year, they have one of their annual events. It's called the Poker Run. They raised over $100,000 in one day. 100% of that went to charity. So again, I'm just trying to give you examples of the ways in which the yachting community gives back to the world. And it's something that I'm very proud of and I continue to support. One of my other groups that I've been a part of even longer than I've been a part of Seakeepers is called the International Super Yacht Society. And we have a number of People Awards. In fact, we're very proud to have the Fabien Cousteau Blue Award that recognizes scientific activities around the world every single year. We also have something that I was part of founding many, many years ago, over 2 decades, called the Distinguished Crew Awards. Some of the vessels and some of the captains that I mentioned have all been honored with the Distinguished Crew Award by the International Super Yacht Society. Super Yacht Society represents the business of yachting. And the business of yachting also, in addition to our volunteers and our charity groups, is very, very involved in giving back to the world around us. Some of the local ones that you might know are IYC, which is the International Yacht Collection, Burgess, one of the largest yacht brokerage and management companies around the world. Each of them have established what they call green teams, so that they actually have people from each division of their companies that are involved in identifying ways in which their businesses, their yachts, and their operations can be more environmentally friendly. I hope that some of you had the chance to attend this year's Monaco Yacht Show. That is definitely one of the leading activities within the large yacht world. And they actually had this year, and I think the theme of the entire Monaco Yacht Show this year was sustainability. And you could definitely see that at the Sustainability Hub, which had over 12 businesses that were actually a part of that, so that everyone that came in through the doors of the Monaco Yacht Show had the opportunity to learn more about the ways in which not just the show itself, but the greater yachting world are very, very concerned and active in sustainability. You may know a company called Four Oceans. It was started by those crazy surfer dudes. You might have had some of their bracelets that are made out of recycled plastics. They are actually a business, and what they do is they implement very active recycling facilities at marinas and in ports all over the world, and that's something that's extremely important. A very good friend of mine named David Gates has a business that's called Super Yacht Rubbish. Well, that's not very glamorous by its name, but what they do, in effect, is extremely active and is something that contributes to the world also. They currently consolidate and help yachts figure out the correct way to dispose of the rubbish that they gather on board. You may not be aware of the fact that when a vessel comes ashore, the way in which they dispose of the rubbish that they have gathered on board is an extremely sensitive subject. In the United States, for instance, when a yacht comes ashore, they are not allowed to have even the bags, much less what's in those bags, touch anything that's ashore. It has to be disposed of in the proper kind of facilities or trucks, whatever it is, but that is something that's huge. They're currently working themselves on some new technology, which we expect, it's already on commercial vessels, we expect to see it in yachts shortly. And that is the ability to actually burn the rubbish aboard and turn it into fuel that can be used primarily for the hospitality needs on board yachts, which is one of the greatest consumers of energy aboard. The Yacht Club of Monaco itself, of course, is very, very active in a variety of different ways of environmental activities. We have the fantastic Claudia Bathymetry that's here representing the Yacht Club of Monaco, and we welcome you, Claudia. Thank you for making the effort to be here. We mentioned YPI Crew yesterday, who is also a big part of Seabed 2030, and we hope to have it be even more important. Now, you know, there's besides yachts, there's a lot of other vessels that travel the world seas, commercial vessels of all types, cruise ships, and they themselves are also, of course, important in developing technology. And believe it or not, the mix between the yachting world, as yachts are getting much larger, the largest yacht in the world is just over 200 meters. Of course, commercial vessels can be very much larger than that. But there is a huge mix of technology and operational knowledge between the commercial and the yachting world. And I'd just like to give you an example of that. Back in the 1970s, there was a scientist who developed a type of wind propulsion. It was called the Dynarig. And it had large sails that he proposed to put on commercial vessels that would be able to harness the power of the world so that commercial vessels did not have to use as many fossil fuels in order to do their important work around the world. It didn't work in the commercial world. Of course, we know it, many of you probably not alive in the 70s. I remember when we had a real crisis in terms of the availability of gasoline and diesel. That's why the Dynarig was invented. And I'm doing this because that's literally what it looks like. But the very first implementation of the Dynarig was actually on a yacht that you may be familiar with. It was built by an Italian firm called Perini Navi. The hull was built in Turkey and finished. And the Dynarig was developed in the UK and the United States. So that was the very first rig. I did have originally a photo of Maltese Falcon. I don't know, again, I haven't had a chance to look at it because I'm too busy being interested in looking at you people, and I hope the many thousands that are watching there. But the first use of the Dynarig was actually on a yacht. And now we're seeing that with the continued interest in efficiency of propulsion, I think we may well see the first Dynarig on board a commercial vessel soon. Of course, we have very many yacht owners that themselves participate in different types of exploration. We're talking about submarines with Victor Vescovo and the amazing things that he does. There's a yacht owner based out of Florida, and they have the Allen Exploration Fleet, and that specializes in submarine voyaging and research. Another one of the Seakeepers, Seakeeper of the Year, is the fantastic Wendy Schmidt and her Oceans Institute. The Schmidt Marine Technology is involved with the development of innovative technologies that restore, protect the health of our oceans. They are involved in empowering ocean solutions for a healthier planet. We mentioned Holes of Hope yesterday. You might not be familiar with the Pink Flamingos, which is another activity that His Serene Highness, the current reigning Albert. Pink Flamingos is another one of the Schmidt Marine Technology groups. And again, those are part of our Seakeepers Foundations. Education is important. Seakeepers has floating classrooms. The very famous Captain Sandy Yawn has just started her own educational charity to give educational opportunities to school children in the United States and beyond. We've been supporting the Maiden Factor for many years. You're going to see a film about that soon. The Maiden Factor is empowering young women, and they've just started another worldwide cruise. ESWAN is the International Seafarers Welfare and Assistance Network that provides assistance to seafarers of all kinds, 24 hours a day in every language. Another one of our Seakeepers of the Year, Nanoa Thompson, 2 years ago, we were honored to give him that designation. He runs the Polynesian Voyaging Society, and that trains people in traditional non-technology types of navigation, and they have trained people all over the world. Seakeepers themselves has an internship program we've been doing since 2015. So if you have people that you think that would be suitable and are in need of some assistance with what they're doing in the maritime scientific world, please let us know. Monaco Explorations, you're familiar with here, of course, based in Monaco. The Professional Yachting Association, I was hoping that we were going to have Captain Andrew Schofield with us today, but he wasn't able to make it, but you'll be on board the vessel that he is the master of tonight, the White Rose of Drax. He's also the chairman of the Professional Yachting Association. They themselves are doing a seminar today, which is why we don't have more of our yachting captains in the audience. They have a seminar every year at the Monaco Yacht Show they call Sea Changes, and today they're talking about flag states, but they talk about a variety of different types of subjects. And again, another great Monaco institution, the Yacht Club of Monaco, holds a variety of courses every single year. I did my first one with them about 15 years ago called Women in Yachting. They hold the Yachting Master Class a couple of times every year to educate people about the yachting world. And in fact, they have actually launched their own La Belle Classe Académie that teaches necessary courses. You know, yachting has a pretty bad rep in the press. We're made to look really bad. Everybody thinks that we're nothing but nasty polluters, that we have a bunch of vessels that are owned by people that are being sanctioned. Sanctions, by the way, are largely exaggerated. But we do have a lot of press that is positive and tries to spread the message of what I've been talking about here, including magazines like Super Yacht Life, the Triton, and in fact, at the Super Yacht Forum coming up in Amsterdam, day 2 of that 3-day forum is dedicated to what they're calling Ocean Day, and Seakeepers will be participating in that. I'm going to finish up talking about, you know, what is commonly considered to be the elephant in the room of yachting. Let's face it, we are a group of people around the world who are supported by what I always say, to be a yacht owner, you need not be a mere millionaire. You basically have to be a billionaire. But the economic impact that yachting spreads around the world is incredibly important. The global economic impact of yachting in countries like Holland, Italy, Brazil, France, Turkey, Australia, New Zealand, the UK, the United States, and many other countries is over $12 billion per year. New construction alone accounts for about 4.3 billion in all of those countries. Maintenance and refit, very, very important, 3.5 billion per year. The operations, the crew, where the vessels go, the things that they buy all over the year, $4 billion a year. There are over 50,000 professional crew members in the world. There are over 400,000 professionals working in the businesses of yachting. All of those businesses, all of those people, all of that money has an incredible trickle-down effect to economies all over the world that is hugely important. That's in taxes. New businesses are formed all of the time because our industry needs to be and must be at the forefront of new technology, the creation of art, the creation of beauty. The Monaco Yacht Show, every single hotel, all the taxis, the restaurants. So I just want to say to you, and the Fort Lauderdale Boat Show we had, that one boat show, every single year, brings over $1 billion a year to Broward County, where I live. And that is every single year. And 38% of the economy in Broward County, where I live, is derived by the marine economy, the blue economy. So that's extremely important. So again, just to finish up, I'd like to say that yachts are not villains. Yachts do fantastic things. We contribute to the world in many ways. Yes, they are the toys of the rich and famous. However, it's not just toys. They accomplish fantastic things, and they're a very, very important part of globalization in many ways. The true heroes are not the people that own the yachts, not even the businesses or the associations that I'm so proud to be a part of, but really are the people that contribute to the industry itself, the craftsmen, the artists, the engineers, the designers, the crew members, the builders, and of course, the scientists that we all support. So thank you very much. Thank you. Any questions? I think I've given you enough information, but if you don't have any questions now, please feel free to ask me any questions, and launch any of your, arrows of shame towards me, because as you can tell, I'm unapologetic about what the yachting industry contributes to the world.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
So we're going to finish this session with a short video of the maiden and the captain, maiden factor, sorry, and the captain. And after that, we'll be going for the break, and Jennifer will be introducing the next session immediately after the break. So if we can start the video.
We've had 102 women through the Maiden programme, sailing on Maiden and learning these skills, and now they get to put them into practice. Sailing, quite rightly, has a reputation for being sexist, but also it's very white. So, instead of looking in our normal small pool of sailors, we have searched the globe for all the young women who will be sailing on the boat. So we now are the most ethnically diverse crew to ever sail around the world, male or female. It's all part of our final mission, as we race around the world for Maiden's final time. My name is Tracy Edwards, and I'm the founder and manager of the Maiden Factor. We were the first all-female crew to race around the world, and that was 33 years ago, 1989-90 Whitbread Round the World race. We were all expected to die while we were trying to race around the world. I found her in 2014, rotting in the Seychelles, and thought, I need to go and rescue my girl. So we rescued her, brought her back to the UK, restored her to her beautiful former glory. And we spent the past 5 years sailing around the world, raising funds and awareness for girls' education. We have thousands of girls on the boat. It is total chaos, I cannot tell you, but it is wonderful and happy chaos. And we have thousands of children's handprints on spinnaker. And we've also really started to understand that young women are really at the forefront of climate activism. We can give them the tools to make the changes that they want to make. Sustainability is almost a natural part of what we do because, we believe girls are the future. We love collaboration. Collaboration is what women are good at. Obviously working with seakeepers on the seabed logger, which we are so excited about. We feel like a tiny cog in a huge organized collection of data, which is so important.
Seabed 2030 is one of our flagship citizen science programs. So we install a data logger on board their boats, and they record depth measurements as they travel. The logger itself is a very, very small device, and it works with your normal navigation systems to plug and play. Plug it in, forget about it. When you get back to port, you download the information that's recorded on the small memory stick and upload it, and then we do the rest. Maiden is actually doing a world tour at the moment, so it's a perfect vessel for us to actually engage with. They've taken the seabed logger on board, so she's mapping the ocean floor as she travels. Quite a unique vessel, going in and out of ports all over the world. We definitely need vessels like that to work with us. Seabed 2030 is part of the United Nations Ocean Decade flagship program. It's exactly the type of initiative we want to engage with, and we know that anyone who works with us and gets involved with this is actually contributing to real research that will have an impact in the future.
You know, racing, we don't have time to stop and collect water, but we can collect this data. You know, we can take these measurements. So we've already collected 14,000 miles worth of data. And we will be collecting another 27,000 to 33,000 nautical miles as we go around the world. And I feel that we will have done something really important.
Thank you, Rui. Tim, do you want to back quarter two? Sorry, 11, and I'm sure that Norma will be more than happy to answer questions around coffee. Thank you very much.